Lindsay Lohan had the world in her hands. At 18 years old, she was the highest-grossing actress of her generation, had starred in films that earned over $200 million at the box office, was making $7 million per movie, and Hollywood studios were fighting to sign her. Magazine after magazine crowned her as the next Julia Roberts, the natural heir to American romantic comedy. 10 years later, she had spent 14 days in jail, accumulated 6 arrests, lost millions in canceled contracts, and had become the cruel joke of an entire industry that once adored her. Today we're going to discover how Lindsay Lohan went from being Hollywood's princess to a symbol of self-destruction and wasted opportunities. Welcome to Celebrities Done. Lindsay's story begins like an American fairy tale. She was born on July 2nd, 1986 in New York, daughter of Michael and Dina Lohan. From the age of 3, she was already in front of cameras, modeling for Calvin Klein and appearing in commercials. But her real jump to fame came in 1998 when Disney chose her to star in the new version of The Parent Trap. Lindsay was barely 11 years old and had to play 2 completely opposite twin roles. The film was a massive success. It grossed $92 million worldwide and turned this red-haired girl into Hollywood's new child sensation. Studios couldn't believe what they had on their hands. A child with natural comedic timing, overflowing charisma, and the ability to carry an entire movie on her shoulders. Disney immediately put her to work. Between 1998 and 2003, Lindsay starred in Freaky Friday with Jamie Lee Curtis, Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, and the movie that would change her life forever, Mean Girls. Directed by Mark Waters and written by Tina Fey, Mean Girls premiered in April 2004 and was an instant cultural phenomenon. The film grossed $130 million worldwide, but even more importantly, it turned Lindsay Lohan into a generational icon. She was 17 years old and already unstoppable. At that moment, Lindsay had everything: beauty, talent, charisma, and million-dollar offers on her desk. Contracts were pouring in. She signed with Ford Models, launched her music career with 2 albums that sold over 1 million copies combined, became the face of luxury brands, and was earning between $7 and $10 million per film. By 2005, at just 19 years old, her estimated net worth was around $30 million. She was living in a Beverly Hills mansion, partying with the Hollywood elite, and gracing every magazine cover in America. Entertainment Weekly called her the it girl of her generation. Vanity Fair featured her on their cover. She was dating famous musicians and actors. Lindsay Lohan wasn't just a star, she was a brand, a cultural movement, the girl every teenager wanted to be. But behind the glossy magazine covers and red carpet smiles, cracks were already beginning to show. Lindsay's family life had always been turbulent. Her father, Michael Lohan, had a history of legal troubles and substance abuse. He was arrested multiple times throughout Lindsay's childhood for securities, fraud, assault, and driving under the influence. Her parents' marriage was a war zone of screaming matches, public fights, and bitter accusations. When they finally divorced in 2007, it became a media circus, with both parents using their daughter's fame to settle scores in public. Michael would call tabloids to criticize Dina. Dina would go on television to bash Michael, and Lindsay was trapped in the middle, watching her family implode while cameras documented every ugly moment. The pressure was suffocating. Lindsay had been working non-stop since she was 3 years old. She never had a normal childhood. She never went to prom, never had sleepovers with friends, never experienced the simple joy of being anonymous. Instead, she was in hair and makeup at 5 in the morning, memorizing lines, hitting marks, being told to smile, be charming, be perfect. By the time she was 20, she had been performing for 17 years straight. She was exhausted, traumatized by her family dysfunction, and completely unprepared for the dark side of fame that was about to consume her. 2007 was the year everything fell apart. In January, Lindsay checked into rehab for the first time at Wonderland Center, a treatment facility in Los Angeles. She spent less than a month there before checking out, claiming she was cured. But she wasn't. In May of that year, she crashed her Mercedes into a curb in Beverly Hills at 5:30 in the morning. When police arrived, they found her visibly intoxicated and discovered cocaine in her car. She was arrested for driving under the influence and possession of a controlled substance. This was her first arrest, and it made headlines worldwide. Just 2 weeks after being released on bail, Lindsay was arrested again. This time, she had been chasing a woman's car through Santa Monica after a party, and when police pulled her over, they found more cocaine in her pocket. 2 DUIs in less than 3 months. 2 arrests. 2 public humiliations. Hollywood was watching, and they were horrified. Studios that had been begging to work with her just months earlier were now quietly distancing themselves. Insurance companies were refusing to cover her for new projects. The Golden Girl had become toxic overnight. The legal consequences came fast. Lindsay was sentenced to 1 day in jail, 10 days of community service, 3 years of probation, and mandatory alcohol education classes. But here's what made everything worse. She didn't take it seriously. She showed up late to her community service. She missed mandatory court appearances. She failed drug tests repeatedly. Her probation officer reported that she was in denial about her addiction and showed no genuine commitment to recovery. The judge was losing patience, and the media was having a field day documenting every misstep. Between 2007 and 2010, Lindsay became more famous for her arrests than her acting. She was photographed drunk and stumbling out of clubs almost every night. Paparazzi followed her everywhere, creating a feeding frenzy that made it impossible for her to recover in peace. They camped outside her house, chased her car through traffic, screamed at her to provoke reactions. Lindsay later admitted that this constant harassment gave her post-traumatic stress disorder. She couldn't go to a grocery store without being mobbed. She couldn't eat at a restaurant without cameras flashing through the windows. The world that had once celebrated her now treated her like a circus animal, and every mistake she made was captured, published, and mocked. But here comes the truly shocking part. Lindsay wasn't just battling addiction and legal troubles. She was also destroying her professional reputation in ways that would haunt her for years. On the set of the movie Georgia Rule in 2006, director Gary Marshall had to write her a brutal letter that later leaked to the press. In it, he accused her of acting like a spoiled child and being discourteous, irresponsible, and unprofessional. He documented how she repeatedly showed up late or didn't show up at all, costing the production hundreds of thousands of dollars. He wrote, "We are a family crew that is in the business of making films together. As such, we have supported you, and you have supported us. It is the right thing to do. If you don't like the heat, get out of the kitchen." The letter was devastating, and it confirmed what Hollywood insiders had been whispering for months. Lindsay Lohan had become impossible to work with. Studios started doing the math, and the numbers were terrifying. Every day, Lindsay didn't show up to set cost productions between $50,000 and $200,000. Insurance companies were demanding massive premiums just to cover her, sometimes doubling or tripling production costs. Directors were spending more time managing her drama than actually directing movies. By 2008, Lindsay was essentially uninsurable. Major studios quietly added her name to an unofficial blacklist. When casting directors suggested her for roles, executives would shake their heads and say, "We can't risk it." She had gone from commanding $7 million per film to being considered too dangerous to hire at any price. The incidents kept piling up. In 2009, Lindsay was sued by a tanning salon employee who claimed Lindsay had assaulted her in a drunken rage. The case was eventually settled out of court, but the damage was done. Then came the most embarrassing scandal of all. In January 2011, Lindsay walked into a jewelry store in Venice, California, tried on a necklace worth $2,500, and simply walked out wearing it. Security cameras captured everything. The store owner called police, and Lindsay was charged with felony grand theft. Her excuse? She claimed the store loaned it to her. Nobody believed her. The judge wasn't amused. Lindsay was sentenced to 120 days in jail and 480 hours of community service. But due to jail overcrowding in Los Angeles County, she only served 14 actual days behind bars. When she was released, photographers captured her leaving jail wearing sunglasses and a leather jacket, trying to look defiant. But everyone could see the truth. This was a broken woman who had thrown away one of the most promising careers in Hollywood history. What nobody understood at the time was how deeply Lindsay was suffering. Years later, in interviews and documentaries, she would open up about the mental health crisis she was experiencing. She talked about feeling like she had lost her identity, about not knowing who Lindsay Lohan was outside of the character the world expected her to play. She described panic attacks so severe she couldn't leave her house. She talked about the overwhelming shame of disappointing everyone who believed in her. And she revealed that the constant media scrutiny made recovery nearly impossible. Every time she tried to get clean, photographers would stake out the rehab center. Every time she tried to start over, tabloids would publish stories about her past failures. The world demanded her downfall, and she gave it to them. Between 2007 and 2015, Lindsay checked into rehabilitation facilities 6 different times, 6 attempts to get clean, and 5 relapses. Promises in Malibu, Cirque Lodge in Utah, Betty Ford Center twice, Cliffside, Malibu, Morningside Recovery. Each time, she would emerge claiming to be sober, healthy, and ready to work. And each time, within months, she would be back in the tabloids, arrested or drunk, or fighting with someone. The cycle seemed endless. Her violations of probation became almost comical in their frequency. In 2010, she missed a court hearing because she claimed to be stuck in France after her passport was stolen at the Cannes Film Festival. The judge didn't buy it and issued a warrant for her arrest. In 2011, she was accused of pushing a rehab worker during an altercation at Betty Ford Center. In 2012, she lied to police about driving during a car accident and was charged with 3 misdemeanors. Her probation was extended again and again. At one point, legal experts calculated that Lindsay had spent more time in courtrooms than on movie sets. The financial losses were staggering. At her peak in 2005, Lindsay was worth an estimated $30 million. By 2013, that fortune had evaporated. She owed millions in back taxes to the IRS. She had blown through her earnings on legal fees, rehab stays, luxury shopping sprees, and supporting her dysfunctional family. Her mother Dina had become dependent on Lindsay's income and was reportedly spending money recklessly. Her father, Michael, was constantly in legal trouble and asking Lindsay for bail money. Her younger siblings were struggling with their own issues. Lindsay wasn't just supporting herself, she was keeping her entire family afloat, and it was drowning her. Hollywood had moved on. The roles that should have been hers went to other actresses. Emma Stone got the parts Lindsay would have played 5 years earlier. Jennifer Lawrence became the new it girl that Lindsay was supposed to be. Anne Hathaway and Amy Adams were dominating romantic comedies. The industry had replaced her, and there was no room to come back. Producers would tell casting directors, "We love Lindsay's talent, but we can't take the risk. What if she doesn't show up? What if she relapses during production? What if she causes a scandal that damages the film's reputation?" The answer was always the same: hire someone else. This was the moment that truly broke Lindsay. Being rejected not for lack of talent, but for being perceived as unreliable and damaged. She would later say in interviews, "I became the girl who cried wolf. Even when I was truly trying, nobody believed me anymore." And she was right. By 2014, Lindsay had become a punchline. Saturday Night Live did sketches mocking her arrests. Award show hosts made jokes about her mugshots. Her name became synonymous with wasted potential and Hollywood excess. The girl who had once been America's sweetheart was now its cautionary tale. But here comes the part that makes this story even more tragic. The media's role in Lindsay's destruction cannot be overstated. Paparazzi culture in the mid-2000s was absolutely brutal, and Lindsay was their favorite target. Photographers would literally chase her car through Los Angeles at dangerous speeds, hoping to provoke an accident or an outburst. They would scream insults at her, trying to make her cry or react violently, so they could sell the photos for tens of thousands of dollars. When she checked into rehab, they would climb trees and use telephoto lenses to photograph her through windows. When she went to court, hundreds of photographers would create a wall of flashing cameras, so thick she couldn't see where she was walking. Princess Diana had died in 1997 while being chased by paparazzi, but nothing had changed. If anything, it had gotten worse. And Lindsay, unlike Diana, didn't have the emotional support system or life experience to handle it. She was a kid who grew up on movie sets, thrust into a nightmare of constant surveillance and public humiliation. Mental health experts later analyzed Lindsay's case and concluded that the trauma of this harassment likely worsened her addiction and made recovery significantly harder. How do you get sober when you can't go to an AA meeting without photographers waiting outside? How do you heal when every mistake is documented and sold to the highest bidder? Lindsay tried to escape. In 2014, she moved to London, hoping that distance from Los Angeles would give her a fresh start. She tried to reinvent herself as a stage actress, appearing in a West End production of Speed the Plow. Critics were mixed. Some praised her commitment, others said she was miscast and struggling. But at least she was working. At least she was trying. She also launched a short-lived reality show on OWN network called Lindsay, which documented her attempts to rebuild her career. The show was brutally honest, showing her missing meetings, fighting with her assistant, and struggling with the temptation to relapse. But it also showed a woman genuinely trying to change, battling demons that most people couldn't imagine. The comeback attempts kept coming, but none of them stuck. She appeared in a few small independent films that barely got released. She opened a nightclub in Greece that failed within 2 years. She launched a fashion line that went nowhere. She did a Super Bowl commercial for Pepsi in 2020 that played on her bad girl image for laughs. Every attempt felt desperate, like she was grasping at anything that might restore even a fraction of her former glory. Then came 2019, and something unexpected happened. Lindsay got married to Bader Shamus, a financier, and seemed to genuinely settle down. She moved to Dubai, away from Hollywood, away from the paparazzi, away from the toxic environment that had nearly killed her. For the first time in over a decade, Lindsay disappeared from the tabloids. And in that silence, something remarkable occurred. People started to miss her. A new generation discovered Mean Girls on streaming platforms and fell in love with her performance. Gen Z, who had been children during Lindsay's meltdown, saw her not as a punchline but as a talented actress who deserved another chance. In 2022, Netflix announced they had signed Lindsay to a multi-picture deal. Her first film, Falling for Christmas, premiered in November 2022 and was watched by 50 million households in its first month. Critics were kind, noting that while it wasn't groundbreaking cinema, Lindsay was charming and seemed genuinely happy to be working again. In 2023, she starred in Irish Wish, another Netflix romantic comedy that performed well. These weren't Oscar-worthy films, and Lindsay wasn't making $7 million anymore, but she was working, she was stable, she was sober, and most importantly, she was alive. The question everyone asks is, could this have been prevented? And the answer is complicated. Yes, Lindsay made terrible choices. She drove drunk multiple times, she stole, she lied, she was unprofessional on sets. Those were her decisions, and she has to own them. But it's also true that she was a child star who never had a chance to develop a normal sense of self. She had an abusive, dysfunctional family that exploited her success. She was thrown into an industry that values youth and beauty above all else, then discarded the moment she stumbled, and she was hunted by a media machine that profited from her suffering. There's a reason so many child stars crash and burn. The pressure is inhuman. The loss of identity is profound. And the transition from being the most desired person in Hollywood to being yesterday's news happens so fast it can destroy your sense of reality. Lindsay wasn't the first, and she won't be the last. Drew Barrymore went through similar struggles in the 80s and 90s. Britney Spears had her own public breakdown in 2007 and 2008. Amanda Bynes, Shia LaBeouf, Demi Lovato, the list goes on and on. These aren't random isolated incidents. This is a pattern, and Hollywood has done almost nothing to address it. What's Lindsay's net worth today? Estimates vary, but most sources put it around $1 to $2 million. That's a 93% loss from her peak of $30 million. She lost movie roles that would have been worth hundreds of millions over her career. She lost endorsement deals with brands like Dooney and Bork and Jill Stewart. She lost the respect of an industry that once worshipped her. and she lost over a decade of her life to addiction, legal battles, and public humiliation. But she's still here. At 38 years old, Lindsay Lohan is sober, married, and working again. She recently announced she's pregnant with her first child. Her Instagram shows a woman who looks genuinely content, posing on beaches in Dubai, smiling without the haunted look that characterized her 20s. Is this a true comeback? Time will tell. Hollywood has a short memory, and if Lindsay can string together a few successful projects, she might actually rebuild a solid career. She'll never be the megastar she was at 18. That moment is gone forever. But maybe that's okay. Maybe being a working actress with a stable life is enough. The legacy of Lindsay Lohan is ultimately one of what could have been. If you go back and watch Mean Girls or Freaky Friday, you see a performer with undeniable star quality. She had comedic timing that most actors spend decades trying to develop. She had vulnerability and strength in equal measure. She could be funny and heartbreaking in the same scene. That talent didn't disappear. It was just buried under years of trauma, addiction, and terrible decisions. Somewhere inside the tabloid punchline is still that 11-year-old girl who lit up the screen in The Parent Trap, and maybe, just maybe, she's finally finding her way back. So what do we learn from Lindsay Lohan's rise and fall? That fame is a drug more powerful than any substance. That the entertainment industry chews up children and spits them out without caring about the damage. That the media's hunger for celebrity destruction is insatiable and cruel. And that even when you have everything, you can lose it all in a matter of years if you don't have the support system, mental health resources, and inner strength to handle the pressure. Lindsay once said in an interview, "I'm my own worst enemy, and I know that, but I'm also my own biggest ally now." That might be the most honest thing she's ever said. Because at the end of the day, the only person who could save Lindsay Lohan was Lindsay Lohan. And after 6 arrests, 7 car accidents, 14 days in jail, 6 trips to rehab, and losing almost everything, she finally did. What do you think? Did Lindsay deserve the treatment she received from Hollywood and the media? Or was she a young woman who made mistakes and paid a price far beyond what was fair? Should we celebrate her current comeback? Or is it too little too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more stories of celebrities who rose to the top and fell to the bottom, hit that subscribe button and let us know who you want us to cover next. Should we dive into Britney Spears' conservatorship nightmare, Charlie Sheen's public meltdown, or maybe the tragic story of Amy Winehouse? This has been Celebrities Done. Thanks for watching, and remember, fame is fleeting, but the internet is forever.